I'm Ashley Deem, Associate Publisher with Fantini Research, and we're going to turn the tables a little bit on our CEO, Frank Fantini, and talk to him both about Fantini Research and some industry trends as a whole. So thanks for joining me, Frank.
I am ready. Thank you for the invitation.
Of course. So Frank, maybe you can talk a little bit about Fantini Research, what we do, and sort of what's next, as we have been through a little bit of an evolution over the last year or two, and let everyone know what we have planned.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ashley. As you know, a lot of people know, historically, our main product has been a daily newsletter that covers the gaming industry comprehensively, globally. Every gaming enterprise in the world, actually. And it's become a must-read publication for lots of people. And we've got that slogan that says more important than your morning coffee, because for some people it is. And what we've done in recent years is we've added specialty publications to that. For example, we've got what we call the National Revenue Report, which is a monthly compilation of all revenue statistics from throughout the United States. And we've got also we have what we call the Public Policy Review. There's probably no industry that is as affected by government regulation, by legislation, as the gaming industry. Mm-hmm. Highly regulated industry. And so we have this publication that is devoted to legislation, regulation, and legal cases involving the gaming industry in all 50 states plus Congress. And we have an individual here who you know, of course, well, Laura Briggs, who is our public policy editor. And she does a really great job in that report. In addition, in recent years, we have developed some partnerships with other firms. One of them is Eilers-Fantini Gaming, and we co-publish with them a quarterly slot survey, where we talk with slot managers and casino managers from in companies throughout the world, actually, and get their take on what they see as their best performing games, their purchasing intentions, and that is the largest such survey of its kind in the industry. And more recently, with Eilers and Krejcik, we have co-published what we call a performance database, and this is a survey with proprietary information done with proprietary software that allows us to answer that question that people have always asked, which is, how does that machine perform? And how does it perform against the house average? And how does it perform against other games? So that's been an extraordinarily valuable tool for industry leaders and for investors. Most recently, within this past year, we have created a publication that we co-publish with Fifth Third Bank, in which we report trends in what's called distributed gaming, or what we older guys call slot routes. And these are cases such as in Nevada, where you have slot machines that are in places like grocery stores and drugstores and taverns, and you have companies that actually service them like you would a vending route. And in other states, these are liquor licensed establishments, fraternal organizations. And it's really an emerging part of the gaming industry. It's gotten bigger. So those are all the publications that we do right now.
And of course, we're here at G2E. And maybe you can just talk a little bit about how our G2E coverage has matured over the years and sort of the position we now hold.
Well, it's kind of interesting that we started, I guess, about 7 years ago. We decided that one of the things that we could do that's appropriate to our mission as a research and publishing company is to take CEOs from the leading companies that will be exhibiting here at G2E and interview them about their priorities for their companies, their priorities as investable enterprises, and the products and services that they are introducing to the world at this show. And it almost immediately became an institution. And people just look forward to it. We have just tens of thousands of views for all of the product demos that we will be videoing, that you will be doing this year, for example. So we have, we think we've actually carved out an information niche and a service to the industry and to investors.
Right. And you get to ask these CEOs a lot of questions
Right. Yeah.
About the industry, but you have a lot of the institutional knowledge and background, and you get asked questions all the time. And I think people would be interested to hear your thoughts on some of these major themes that we have occurring and that we see news about all the time. One of which is the operator consolidations. Do you think you can give us a little bit of insight into your thoughts?
Well, it is interesting that up until a few years ago, there was not a way to get the value for people who wanted to sell their properties that buyers are willing to pay. If you went to a hotel industry, people might pay 12 times cash flow to buy that hotel. For a casino, they might pay 8 times, even though casinos are hotels with a casino attached. You'd think they'd be as valuable or more valuable. But people have always had lower values on casinos, partly because of, quote, the legislative risk, because you never know when the legislature is going to authorize a competitor to open across the street from you, when they're going to raise your taxes, and so on. And then Peter Carlino, who was at Penn Cap National, decided to create a real estate investment trust focused on the gaming industry, which is Gaming and Leisure Properties, Inc. And what that has done is that has allowed these gaming REITs, and there's 3 of them now, MGM Growth Properties and Vici are the other 2, to come in and buy a property at a value that the seller thinks is a fair value, and lease back that property to the original owner, who then becomes the operator in an asset-light model, as they call it. And so that has really spurred consolidation. And what we've seen in recent years is we've seen Ameristar, Pinnacle, for example, be absorbed by these larger companies such as Penn National, Boyd Gaming, through this REIT structure. And of course, the thing that has people abuzz today is the consolidation in Las Vegas, as Eldorado has proposed and appears will achieve an acquisition of Caesars Entertainment.
And then, I think there's been a lot of talk and a lot of questions surrounding the general economy and what's going to happen with consumer trends, over the next year as we head into an election year. Do you have any thoughts on that?
That's one of the questions we've been asking CEOs, right?
Yeah, it is.
And everybody seems to be pretty confident. I don't think you see a complacence, but I think there's a fair confidence that the industry and the economies are fairly strong. And I think also there's a feeling that the industry and the economy as a whole are better able to weather a downturn than during the Great Recession. The problem with the Great Recession is that it was both from the gaming industry point of view, both a real estate development bubble, but also it was a financial bubble. And there was too much debt. And when those things burst, it takes a long time to recover. I think there's a feeling that the next recession is going to be more of a normal business cycle, and that casino companies learned how to operate much more leaner during the last recession. So come the next recession, while everybody might suffer a downturn, that they'll be a lot better prepared for a more shallow downturn. And historically there was this idea that casinos are somewhat insulated from the business cycle because people will always want to pursue entertainment. That's one of the things, you might not be able to buy a new car this year, but you can go out on a Friday night. And that, I think, is what people are confident will continue to be the case in the next recession.
Okay. And I guess I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about sports betting if we're talking current trends. So what are your thoughts on how sports betting develops over the next year or two?
Well, first of all, it's developed a whole heck of a lot faster than anybody thought it would.
Right.
I think 18 months ago, we were wondering, what will the Supreme Court do? Will they come up with a narrow decision? Will they reaffirm the federal ban on sports betting? And what the court did is they threw the whole darn thing out, and they threw it back at the states to regulate, and the states have acted very fast. And part of that, I think, is because daily fantasy sports had come into being. You know, if you look at this historically, fantasy sports was this thing that started a long time ago for people who are like really great baseball fans or football fans, and they can pick their teams. But then when the internet came in, and when mobile devices came in, now you were able to have these fantasy contests every single day. And now it became less of a fantasy contest and more of like betting. Mm-hmm. So when the Supreme Court allowed gambling, the states to regulate gambling, didn't allow it, but ruled that that's the proper role. Fantasy sports was already there, ready to kind of like as a wedge to open the gates. And now one state wants to follow the other. Nobody wants to be alone. They all want to cash in. So that's the first thing. It's developed very, very rapidly. The second thing is that because of mobile devices and because of in-game betting, where you can now bet on things happening right now in the game, there's a whole heck of a lot more interest in it than it was when it was just parlay bets or when you had to make a bet, you know, a week in advance on a contest. And so you've got a lot more participation. And you can see even in the early stages that we are in the United States today, you can see in like New Jersey, where such an enormous amount of, in relative terms as a percentage, is being bet on mobile and on in-game. So historically, sports betting has been more an amenity for casinos than a profit center. You got your sports book off there in the corner and a bunch of guys looking at their racing forms, and you know, maybe 2% of your revenue is generated out of the sports book. But now, I think because of online gaming, because of online sports betting, because of mobile, because of in-game, I think you're going to see that sports betting is going to become a more significant contributor to casino profits. But I think the companies that are going to make the big profits out of it aren't the casinos per se. They're going to be the companies that are providing the services, either the sports betting companies themselves, such as a William Hill or a Flutter, or the companies that are providing the platforms that those other companies operate on.
And so I'll ask one final question as we wrap up and switch it back to Fantini research a little bit. This is another question that you like to ask, and I'm going to put a twist on it. We exist in large part for investors.
Correct.
So what is something that investors should know about Fantini research as they look to us as an information source?
Well, we are really the only publishing company that focuses on investors. There are a lot of trade journals out there that do a really great job and touch on investing in the business of the gaming industry. There are others that deal with certain aspects of it, like legal journals and so on. And I would say that probably if we could sum up what we do with one word, it's credibility. You know, we are here to serve the investor. We don't have an axe to grind. We're not going to pull punches because we have advertisers that we're going to alienate. We are a subscription-based company serving investors, and investors, they need the straight scoop, you know, because they're investing their money and their clients' money. So we don't dare sugarcoat something or pull punches or have an axe to grind. We have got to be purely neutral and serving that person whose money he is investing.
Well, thank you for all of the insight, Frank, and thanks for switching chairs.
Well, Ashley, thank you, and maybe I'll interview you next.
All right, great.